Welcome back, everybody, to Ein Sof Learning. This week, we have two Torah portions. The first one being Tazria, which literally means to conceive. And the second portion is called Metzorah, which refers to the spiritual affliction that is often mistranslated into English as leprosy. So I want to focus on the first portion before we get into the second portion. In the first portion of Tazria, we see the case of a woman who conceives and gives birth to a child. And the Torah says that she falls into a category called tameh. The word tameh literally means impure or contaminated. The Torah is telling us that when a woman conceives and gives birth to a child, she becomes impure. Now the question becomes, and this is a question that has bothered me and many who read this portion, is what does that exactly mean? Number one, why does she become impure? But number two, what does it mean that she becomes impure? Is it the fault of the woman that she is a creator of a child? She was given the God-given ability to create a child, and now you're going to punish her by calling her impure for engaging in the act of procreation? Of course, this is not what it is. There must be something more to the idea and to the definition of what it means to be tameh. And by understanding what it means to be tameh, which means impure, we can also understand the meaning of tahora, which means purity. The concept of tumah v'tahora, impurity and purity, are two concepts in the Torah that are often misunderstood as physical states of cleanliness. For example, that this woman is giving birth to a child, therefore she is physically impure. And that is not the proper understanding of this idea. Rather, it is a spiritual or legalistic category that a person falls into when they come into contact with certain objects or certain cycles that are natural throughout their life. For example, another case of a woman becoming impure is whenever she goes through her menstrual cycle. The natural menstrual cycle that a woman goes through at least once a month, I think at most once a month, if I'm not mistaken, it also classifies that woman as tameh. And she needs to go through a period of, no pun intended, but she needs to go through a period of purification. There is a process that is involved to bring her back to the state of spiritual cleanliness that she had before her contamination, so to speak. So we need to understand that these laws surrounding purity and impurity have a much deeper explanation, which I hope to lay out for you in this video. So in the Torah, the concept of purity and impurity fall into the category of laws called chukim. Chukim refers to the laws of the Torah that are beyond natural explanation. In other words, we have some commandments in the Torah that you could offer a natural explanation for. For example, why do we honor our father and our mother? There could be a natural explanation because they gave you life into this world. We can find a way to naturally justify why that commandment should be followed. Or another example is not to steal or not to murder. We can give natural explanations. There exists natural explanations for these laws, even though that they are all from God. That doesn't mean that they come from nature. These laws come from Hashem. But we could use some naturalistic resources in order to understand the meaning and the reasoning behind them. However, there is another category of laws called chukim, which are those laws that do not have a naturalistic explanation. Rather, just as other commandments, they come from Hashem, but the meaning and the reasoning behind that commandment is also a divine reason. It is not a naturalistic one. So, tumah and tahora, impurity and purity, fall into that category, that they do not have a natural explanation behind them. What's the real meaning of tumah? I know we translate it as impurity, but what does it really mean on a spiritual level? Tumah literally means a lack of kedusha, a lack of holiness. Now, of course, we need to understand what it means, holiness. Holiness is the energy that comes from Hashem. The light, the divine energy, the vitality that extends from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Holy One, blessed be He. He is the source of all Kedushah, of all holiness. And in fact, it is because He is holy that we are commanded to be holy. In the Parashat of Kedoshim, Hashem commands us to be holy. He says, Kedoshim tihyeh, you shall be holy. Why? Ki ani kodesh, because I am holy. So since God is holy, therefore the Jewish people are commanded to be holy. That means that their holiness extends from Hashem. And since we are made in the image of Hashem, we have not only the potential, but the obligation to live this holy image out in the physical world, not just remain in potential. So a lack of holiness implies a distance from Hashem. It implies being far from that image that Hashem says that we were made in. So when something is far from holiness, that's what we call impure. Impurity means that it is void of Kedusha. It is lacking holiness. So now we can think of tumah as a kind of spiritual emptiness, a gap where Kedusha is not present. There is no holiness present in that object or in that person that is classified as tameh. It's not like it's bad or evil. It doesn't mean that that person is bad or evil. It's simply a state. It's a ritual or a legalistic category where there is less connection to the divine. It's not a punishment. It's not an evil decree against that person. Rather, it is a legalistic category or state of being where that person is distant from Hashem. So upon this idea, you can ask a question. If the laws of purity and impurity are beyond logical explanation, they do not have a logical understanding or reasoning behind them, then does that mean we should just abandon our efforts in trying to understand them? Hashem is telling us these are chukim. They're beyond logic. Does that mean we should not try to understand them? And the answer, of course, according to Kabbalah, is no. You need to exert yourself to fulfill your portion in all the commandments of the Torah. In other words, even the chukim, even those laws that lack a logical explanation, still remain to be understood on a spiritual level. On a spiritual level of application. So that's where Kabbalah and Chassidut comes in to take you to that soul level, to that spiritual reasoning that exists of why these commandments are given to us. Why does Hashem command us things that we cannot understand? And the answer is that He does not. There is always an understanding, but whether that is a naturalistic understanding or a divine understanding is what makes the division between these two categories. But every law has a reasoning and an understanding behind it. If not, then that means that the Torah is incomplete. And of course, we know that that's not true, which means that there must be a reason, because there needs to be a soul and a body. Every mitzvah, every commandment is compared to a body, a vessel. And the reasoning or the understanding of that commandment is compared to the soul of that commandment. The light and the fulfillment of that mitzvah is the understanding of the intention behind that mitzvah. While the performance of that action is the vessel, it's the body itself. You need both in order to be complete. So to say that there is no understanding for the commandments that are beyond logic is to imply that the Torah is incomplete. It's to imply that these commandments lack souls. And that's not true. The Torah itself is made of these two aspects, body and soul. That's what we call pshat and sod. The pshat, the simple read of the Torah, is the body of the Torah, while the secrets of the Torah, which is Kabbalah, are the soul of the Torah. That's why we call, Chokhmata Nistar. It's the hidden wisdom of the Torah. That's the secrets and the Kabbalah, which is the soul of the Torah, right? And also you can also call Chassidut the soul of the Torah as well. Kabbalah and Hasidut are similar in that they both explain the deeper levels of the Torah, albeit in different ways. So, in Hasidic thought, in fact, let's get to Hasidut now, tumah and ta'orah points us toward a closer connection with Hashem. Even when something seems impure, it's part of a bigger spiritual picture, and through it, we can reach greater holiness. In other words, yes, it's true that there are ways to become impure. And yes, it's true that while you're impure, you are considered distant from Hashem and void of holiness. And yes, it is true that when a person commits a sin, he acquires this state of tumah. And what happens when a person becomes tameh? They become void of kedusha. That means that your nefesh, your ruach, and your neshama, which are the three levels of the soul that every person of Israel has, which are all holy and come from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, must depart from you. If you contaminate yourself, your soul, which is holy, must leave. Why does it leave? In order to preserve its own sanctity. God forbid, if that soul were to remain within the body, while it's contaminated, that soul, God forbid, become contaminated. So in an effort to preserve the sanctity of the soul, Hashem causes it to flee from this body, from this individual, the moment that they come into contact with something that is impure, thereby causing their body to become impure. So the vessel, the cup, the container becomes dirty, so to speak, and therefore the fulfillment, the liquid or the soul that was inhabiting that vessel must depart in order to preserve its sanctity. So what's the purpose of tumah? If this doesn't mean that I'm evil, if it's not a punishment, if it's not here to condemn me, rather it is a spiritual state of being or a legalistic category that a person enters when they do certain things, then what is the purpose of impurity in the first place? And the answer is the same answer to the question, why does evil exist in the first place? We said that impurity doesn't necessarily imply wickedness, but they both are similar in the sense that they imply a lack of holiness, a void of kedusha. So, in that regard, impurity and evil have that in common, that they both imply a lack of kedusha. So by understanding why there's evil in the first place, then we can understand why there's tumah. Because it is for the same reason that they both exist. In the world of holiness, there has to be something opposite or other in order to make room for the concept of free will. If you don't have both the option to do something good and the option to do something bad, then there really is no such thing as free will, is there? Because you would be forced to choose that which is good all the time, or that which is bad all the time. You need to have both options in order to say that you are free to choose one over the other. So on a simple level, that is the essence of the reason of why there exists evil in the world, why there exists darkness, why there exists suffering. All of these things exist only to give contrast to those things that exist on the side of good, to those that exist on the side of holiness, to the light. Because you cannot understand the light and appreciate the light if you do not first undergo darkness. Same thing applies with good and bad. You cannot appreciate and really understand the good in the world if you do not first experience the bad, or at least understand why that is bad through experiencing it. So a person needs to undergo this process of development, that they first start with the darkness and they emerge into the light. It is only then that they are able to appreciate the light. A lot of people wish that this was not the case, but it happens to be a law that God built into the creation: exile and redemption. And it is for this reason that the Jewish calendar and the Jewish day begins at evening, not in the morning. The Jewish day begins at evening. That's why the Torah says, Vayehi erev, vayehi voker, yom echad. It was evening and it was morning, one day. Then he says it again, Vayehi erev, vayehi voker, yom sheni. It was evening, it was day number 2. So on and so forth to complete the entire week. That means each day begins at sundown. And it completes on the following day at sundown. So from evening to evening is the way we measure a 24-hour period in the Jewish day calendar. Because you need to go through the evening, which means the darkness of the night, before you're able to emerge victorious and redeemed on the other side, which is the moment that the sun begins to shine at dawn. A lot of people, they like to think that the day begins at 12 a.m. and it ends at 12 a.m. the following day. That's the way we've been conditioned to understand. But the Torah says differently. It says that it begins at the evening of the previous day and ends at the evening of the following day. That means you begin with a descent into the darkness. You begin with a descent into Egypt. Nighttime is compared to Egypt because Egypt represents slavery and lack of wisdom, lack of clarity. A slave is a person who lacks intelligence, who lacks knowledge of God. That's a slave. They lack knowledge, and it is for that reason that they're able to be controlled in this manner. You can only control someone who doesn't know the truth. You cannot control someone who knows the truth. So the essence of slavery and the essence of the slavery of the Israelites in Egypt some 3,300 years ago is defined by a lack of knowledge of Torah, a lack of knowledge and awareness of the truth. That's symbolized by the darkness of nighttime, which is why the day begins at evening to symbolize the descent into Egypt. Nighttime represents that period of absence of the light, absence of awareness. And by the way, not to mention, that's why when you sleep, when a person sleeps, they go unconscious. It is for that reason that they go unconscious. The soul desires to go back to its home in the spiritual worlds. The soul is the one that contains the intellect. The soul contains the awareness. What really is it that gives you awareness? What we call da'at. Do animals have awareness? No. They are not aware. Yes, they have some thoughts. They have some intellectual, energy that they need to exert. Should I attack now? Should I not attack now? But they don't think, really. They just act. The thought is there just to facilitate the act. It's not there to ponder deeper into reality. Animals lack this higher awareness because they lack a soul of that level, what we call the intellect. They have the animalistic soul, what we call nefesh behemi. All animals have that level of the soul. And by the way, every human has that as well. But on top of that, we have a nefesh eloki, which gives us the capacity to rise above those instincts and tap into a deeper level of awareness of reality. That's the human soul, which animals lack. So when we sleep, we quite literally return to a state of unconsciousness because the soul departs during that time. And the following morning when we wake up again, the soul returns and we begin our day with a line. Modeh ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam, shehechazarta bi nishmati, bechemla rabba emunatecha. Hashem, you have returned my neshama within me. You are faithful. You are amazing for having returned my neshama back into my body, my breath back into my lungs. That's the first words that we emit from our mouth when we wake up in the morning. So we see that the whole concept of purity and impurity is really built into the creation because it is during this sleep period that a person becomes tameh. While you're asleep, the body is considered impure. That's because the soul left. It's a void of holiness, the way we've defined it. Tameh, tumah, impurity, contamination, is defined by a void or a lack of holiness. And the only thing that's holy in this world are the souls, specifically of Israel, nefesh, ruach, neshama. That represents the kedusha that God has sent into this world. There is no other holiness that exists. Some people may be turned on or off by this idea, but this is the Torah. The Torah explains that there are 600,000 neshamot of Israel. Neither can you increase it or neither can you decrease it. So you might ask the question, how can there be only 600,000 souls but 15 million Jews worldwide? And the answer is because Kabbalah explains that these neshamot can be branched off into smaller pieces, so to speak, called ruach and nefesh. And even then, each spark has another 5 levels. The nefesh has 5 levels. The ruach has 5 levels. The neshama has 5 levels. So any Jewish individual has a certain measurement of spiritual revelation or spiritual containment defined by the soul that is in them. But it might not be a full neshama, rather it could be a spark of a neshama. Or it could be a spark of a neshama. So therefore you can have more people, more vessels, more bodies of Jewish people, but the actual number of souls is the same, which is 600,000. And that is all of the holiness that exists in the world. Only these 600,000 neshamot, which are extensions of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He. And by the way, the holiness of the Jewish people extends from Shabbat. That's why Shabbat is called the day of holiness. It's a day that God has prescribed to be holy. The 7th day. It's sanctified. It's the source of holiness and the source of all blessings. Because on the 6th day, God finished the creation of heaven and earth. And on the 7th day, He rested. And He proclaimed that that day should be recognized for all eternity as the day of rest. Yom HaMenucha. The day of rest, that means the day of light. Because rest is the quality of the light. The light is in a state of complete rest. We're talking about the light of God. The energy of Hashem, it's in a complete state of rest. Menucha. So one day of the week, God has dedicated to the side to be a day of light, a day of holiness, a day of blessing, a day of redemption. Until you go back down into the 6 days of the week, which are likewise symbolized by a descent into Egypt. The 6 days of the week are Egypt. The 7th day of the week is Shabbat, which is redemption. The land of Israel. So we see this pattern throughout many different facets of our lives. When you sleep, going into the 6th day of the week, when a woman enters her menstrual period. These are cycles of revelation and concealment of the light of Hashem. When night comes, the light is concealed. When morning comes, the light is revealed. When the 6 days come, the light is concealed. When Shabbat comes, the light is revealed. When a woman enters her period cycle, the light is concealed. When she emerges victorious on the other end, the light is once again revealed. And she is then able to commune with her husband once again, because so long as you're in a state of tameh, impurity, you cannot engage in anything that is holy. First, you need to become ritually pure. And only then are you able to touch holy objects. The same way that you needed to be purified before entering the temple, the holy temple, before you're able to enter, the Kohen need to first immerse himself in a mikveh. a holy body of water. And only then is he able to interact and touch holy objects and holy rituals once again. So I hope that this video offered a little bit more clarification on the concept of purity and impurity. Again, it's not about condemning a person. It's not a punishment. It's not a rebuke against the person. Rather, it is a legalistic category. It is a spiritual state of ritual purity or impurity that a person falls into by virtue of doing certain things or undergoing certain natural processes. Not to mention when a man wastes seed, when he emits semen, when a man emits semen, they also become impure as well, and they need to immerse in a mikveh. So this is not about women or men. This is just a legalistic category that any individual can enter whenever they do certain things. And then there are certain rituals that a person can do in order to become ritually pure once again, so they can connect back with the holiness of their soul, symbolized by the redemption from Egypt. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you learned something new, and I'll see you in the next one.